I'd like to further comment on a press release that was issued by Dr. Petit. I've taken some time to review my records, my correspondences, and I think that there's some things that should still be clarified. First of all, I'd like to state that, Dr. Petit is a person for whom, on a professional level, as a medical professional, is a person for whom I have a lot of respect. I think that as a doctor, he's a tremendous doctor. He's actually delivered 2 of my children and helped my family with a number of issues. But as former chairman of the supervisory board and during his time as chairman of the supervisory board, I think that some of the comments that have been made are concerning, to say the least. I've checked my agenda, and as I can see, I've had 3 meetings with, well, actually, 1 meeting first in December 2015. That was my introductory meeting with the supervisory board of the SZV. 1 meeting with Dr. Petit on February 26th, and the last was his farewell party last week. I've received no requests from the board of SZV for an urgent meeting or any sort of a discussion about what could be considered any overreaching or undue influence by the Minister of Public Health. So while I'd like to think that I'm a highly influential person, I think that still 3 meetings, including a farewell party, and the 1 meeting was just with Dr. Petit, not even with the supervisory board. To think that I have that type of influence over a supervisory board is hard to imagine. I would like to discuss a little bit the contents of the meeting from December 15th. And in that meeting, and I have some of my notes, is when I explained to the supervisory board that I had the intention to reverse the decision by the previous government about proceeding with the construction, design, build, and construction of the new hospital with VAMED. And at that time, Michel Petit raised a number of points as to why I would be undoing the process. Offered that instead of doing a transparent bidding process, to just hire 2 external consultants and let them review the project to ensure that the project cost is not inflated. I reiterated at that point that, look, I'm not against VAMED, but I want to make sure that the people are getting the best value for their money, and if it turns out to be VAMED, that's fine, but that my interest is to make sure that the people's money is well spent. I questioned, I still don't see why this is so hard to put out for bid. We all want the same thing. I simply want to spend the people's money responsibly. Reiterated, I'm committed to a new hospital and to do it sustainably. And again, Michel Petit was of the opinion that there was no need to undo the process with VAMED and simply sufficient to hire 2 external consultants to advise whether the price was a reasonable price. And in the end, I stand behind the decision we made to do it in a very open and transparent manner. I believe that the outcome is yielding a hospital that is appropriate for the country and at a good price. There have been a number of communications as well, letters, correspondences, and much of it revolves around my insistence that the board of SZV has failed to live up to all of their responsibilities. Specifically, some points that were mentioned: a failure to nominate board members on time. As a matter of fact, right now, we have the appointment of Ms. Shireen Daniels, but there's still 2 board seats available that are still not occupied. Failure to nominate the director on time. Failure to nominate a deputy director at all. And a failure to submit annual reports for 2015 and 2014. So there's a number of issues that I believe we've been consistently bringing up, and if again you consider that, what is that, undue influence or overreaching or undue influence, I think that that's not true. The board has a responsibility, and as minister, I have a responsibility to ensure that the board is adhering to their obligations. And I think notifying them in writing as to what they're deficient in and what they need to work on is certainly appropriate. That's a matter of fact, that's my job. So Dr. Batiste mentioned some points in here where he has concerns about my influence over the board. I've not, in any of the correspondences, seen any indication that, any warning, any note that says, Minister, I think you're overstepping your boundaries. There's not been one request for an urgent meeting, and I think that if that's his sentiment, I think that's something that at least should have been communicated prior to his departure. I find it very odd that he sends a letter to the media, doesn't even bother to copy me on the letter, and like I said, I saw him simply a week before he resigned, and again, no mention whatsoever of that. And I think as chairman of the board of SZV, he has a responsibility to protect SZV and to protect the funds. And as I understand it, like I said, he's issued no such letter of concern, simply resigned and says that he's going to, as I see here, says that I will file a formal complaint with the public prosecutor or national detectives to protect myself from future claims. So again, his concern is simply about protecting himself, not about protecting the funds or protecting the SZV. So that's something that I think that if truly you're concerned about protecting SZV and the people, then actually you should have stayed and you should have voiced your concerns in an appropriate manner.
August 24th, or throughout the night, I must say, after much deliberation and notices from the authorities on the impending weather situation, which is only now actually showing its strength, I took the decision at about 11:30 after speaking to the meteorological department head that school would be suspended today, for the simple reasons that we have seen in the past what rain over a short period of time, heavy rain over a short period of time can do, and the flash flooding that had also been announced from the meteorological department. So I do stand by that decision, despite some of the outcry this morning when we woke up to pretty clear skies. I was also informed when I got the update at 5:15 that the system had moved more south of us than had been expected, and that we would still be expected to have some rain during the day, particularly around 11 a.m. I didn't want to announce times since we'd already been proven halfway wrong. So I did mention that there would be some stormy conditions during the morning, and as I was trying to get in here, I had a very hard time. And I don't think that any parent now, seeing the situation, would regret that their children are safely at home. So with that, I urge the population to keep a good eye on the system. It is still within our area. It is still affecting us. Some people have not been able to go out to work because of their situation. The announcement was pretty late, after 11, and so finding out this morning for many did cause some problems, and for that I do apologize. But because the system was not showing exactly what it was going to do, I prefer to make a statement at 11:30 than to make the statement at 5, especially if we had woken up at 5 to horrid conditions, so, and have children out on the road, because we do have children taking buses from 6 in the morning. And so to avoid that problem, the announcement was made at 11. There are several other issues brewing, but I'm sure that the media will ask questions about those. So,
last week, I announced that the steps were taken to change the law based on which foundations, associations had to file profit taxes. The feedback I'm getting is that some people have been a little overzealous and have interpreted as, yes, the Minister of Finance said that associations and foundations don't have to pay any taxes, and therefore they don't have to pay any TOT taxes, and they don't have to pay any wage taxes. But that's stretching it a little too far. The report that I gave only concerned filing for profit taxes, Of course, if you have an employee and the employee is earning a salary, you have to make your contribution to the part that you need to do for social coverage of that employee, and for taxes the employee have to make, and you have to, of course, pay those taxes to the receiver of taxes. And if you collect TOT because you had some transaction that is covered by TOT, then of course that TOT also have to be paid to the island receiver. The comment I made and the report I gave was a change that I made, only putting the burden on foundation and trust to file profit taxes, and only those foundations and associations who operate a business as such are the ones who will have to file profit taxes in future. So I hope with that I've clarified that, and that everybody would act accordingly. Last week, as I mentioned also, I went to Curacao and had a meeting of shareholders. Basically, it was the Minister of Finance of Curacao and myself and the board of the supervisory board of the bank and the management. And in that meeting, we ratified the financial statements of the bank for 2015. And I'm pleased to report that as a result of the ratification of those financial statements, that we can be expecting a check of 10 million guilders as our share of the profits of the central bank for 2015 and 2 or 3 years before that. So that was welcome news, and it would help our budget tremendously. I also would like to let you know that yesterday in the Council of Ministers, a new legislation was filed by myself, or by the Ministry of Finance, that's aimed towards compliance. You know, compliance is a major problem as far as St. Martin is concerned. So the legislation which we have submitted was to create a basis going forward to improve compliance. Improve compliance in terms of giving certain authorities to the tax inspectorate, laying the foundation to demand that certain businesses, which will be determined in a ministerial regulation after this law amendment has been passed, to require businesses to install cash registers so that accurately we can get a reflection as to what their sales are, and to minimize cheating and to improve tax compliance. The law also creates the basis for electronic communication between the tax department and the taxpayer. More and more we're moving towards an electronic world, a digital world, and it would assist compliance also if the tax department and the taxpayer could communicate directly via or digitally or via the internet, filing of their taxes instead of using paper and filling that in and then taking it to them or mailing it to them, that you can do that in whatever environment you're in electronically, and that you can get responses on it electronically. The idea is to shorten the time that these activities take place by, instead of going to the tax department or sending it out by mail or by marshal, that all of this be done electronically. It's also good for the environment because you will not be using paper, and probably will have more trees in the world eventually. We also, in the law that I've submitted, is addressing the need for information exchange internationally. Information exchange internationally, where more and more we see that countries that we have treaties with require information from us and we from them, to be able to properly and accurately establish the basis on which someone has to be taxed. This opens the door to also make that possible in future. Finally, I would also like to make a comment based on news that I read or hear from time to time, where there are proponents out there saying, yes, let's move to a flat tax. Or, no, let's get away with all profit taxes and all income taxes and only have indirect taxes. Well, little do they realize that if you move to a flat tax, in fact, what you're doing is giving a tax break to the rich. And if you remove all income tax and profit taxes and only go to indirect taxes, again, all you're doing is reducing taxes for the rich. Because those who are less fortunate, if they go and buy a chair, if we're talking about indirect taxes, that those indirect taxes would be included in the price of the chair. And if someone who's rich go and buy that same chair, the same taxes, indirect taxes, is included in that chair for that less fortunate person, the rich person is paying the same amount. Indirect taxes and flat taxes are totally unacceptable for the masses of our country, because it puts a tax burden on them that's not fair. Our tax system is based on a progressive basis. The progressive basis is the more you earn, the more you pay. And that has to be maintained. Suggesting that everybody pay the same only benefits those who make more. And the same burden on them is the same burden that you will have on the less fortunate. So flat taxes and indirect taxes is a big no-no. I'm totally against it. I think it's unfair to those who are less fortunate, and that will not happen on my watch. Taxes, we have to maintain the system, has to be progressive. If we look at, for instance, electricity rates and water rates, the same progressive idea is applied to those rates. The more you spend in water or buy in water, the more and the higher rate you pay. And the higher rate you pay help to subsidize the cost of water for the less fortunate. That progressive idea has to remain in the tax system. We are working on tax reform. Tax reform has to be done carefully, has to be studied seriously, and has to have an effect that does not burden one group over the other in a manner that is unfair. It has to be a combination of factors. Some say, well, let's get away of all of the taxes and only charge sales taxes. Or some say, well, the other islands around us, they don't have income tax and they don't have profit tax. So let's do like them and charge a sales tax. Like in St. Kitts, they charge 70%, 17% on everything you buy. What is being forgotten is that besides that sales tax, those islands without income tax and profit taxes receive their revenues to carry out the obligations that they have from import duties. So anyone who says they want to get rid of direct taxes and only go to indirect taxes, in fact saying, okay, let's do like the other islands and start import duties too, because without it, you will not generate sufficient revenues. The tax system we need to go to has to be a combination of all three factors, and that's what we're working on. Thank you very much.
The Department of Communication, in collaboration with the University of St. Martin, invites you to a third lecture in the series, The Law Matters to You. Join us at USM, 7 p.m., Monday, August 29th, and hear keynote speakers Bert Hoffman, Chairman of the Electoral Council, and Jason Rogers, Chairman of the Maine Voting Bureau, as they focus on the 2016 parliamentary elections and the electoral laws of St. Martin. The Law Matters to You, a lecture series built to inform and educate.
The Supervisory Board of Directors, you said in your statement that there are 2 seats still empty, and the Supervisory Board did not submit names or did not find candidates in a timely manner. Based on my research, the Supervisory Board submitted at least 5 names or to be selected by you or to be nominated by you, and only 1 person was appointed. Is it a fact that the Supervisory Board submitted more than 1 person to be nominated as members of the Supervisory Board? Question number 2 in the same,
Let me answer that first, if you don't mind. So I received on February 25th a list. So the way it works is per board position, 2 nominations are sent, of which I could choose one of the 2 nominations. Yeah? Some of the candidates that they submitted did not meet their own profiles that they've established themselves. I selected, so for one category, the feeling was neither of the submitted applicants complied with their specifications. For the other 2 seats, 2 nominations were sent, of which one is Ms. Shireen Daniels, who has only recently actually taken up her seat. For the other, there was a nomination that was sent, but in the end, she had a problem with her employer, who did not agree with her accepting the position. So this was notified to, I nominated 2 out of the 3. 1 passed the screening and has taken her seat just recently. The other was prohibited by her employer to actually take up the position. And this was in April, this was sent to them. So and May 9th notified that the legal nominees that they sent didn't qualify or weren't accepted. And since then, I've received no other nominations for those seats.
I'm going to go to a second question, but I'm coming back on that question in my second round. The director, you spoke of the director. Do you have a performance contract in place for the director? And when was the Landsbesleuth signed off, retroactive to 2014 for the current director? That the Supervisory Board, that I understand, informed you that was not legal, but by the way, went along and have him screened for the position. So my question to you in relation to the director in position at SZV, do you have a performance contract for him in place? And if so, when was it signed? And when was his Landsbesleuth signed retroactive to 2014?
So his performance contract, there is a draft of it. We're in negotiations with that, in discussions. That has not been signed as of yet, but is ready to imminently be signed. And this is something that has never been in place. So this is the first time that the performance agreement would be put into place. So the draft has been discussed, and I think it's almost ready to sign. Regarding the Landsbesleuth, I don't remember exactly the date, but it was within the past few weeks that it was signed. I don't know the exact date off, I don't have the document here with me. And regarding, I'm not sure why you are saying they were against it. I have a letter here. This is from Michel Petit, Chairman of the Board, on March 22nd, requesting to formalize the appointment of the director via national decree and to have the screening executed. They're the ones who signed the letter requesting the screening. So how they say they were against it when they signed the letter requesting the screening, I have no idea what he's talking about, what you're referring to.
I'll explain that to you in my second round, but my third question in this round, do you have a purchase agreement with SZV and the government of St. Martin for the government building in place, knowing that SZV has already started using pension funds to invest in getting the building ready for government? Is there a purchase agreement in place?
In reality, that's something that the Minister of Finance can answer, because that agreement would be executed not by myself, but through the Ministry of Finance, right? That agreement is something that you are working on. So I think the Minister of
There
Finance...
is an agreement signed, there is an agreement signed between SZV and the government, based on which the activities are taking place. That agreement, together with a lease agreement, together with the deed for transfer of the building, we're now presently with lawyers, with SZB lawyer, in fact, 11 o'clock today, to finalize that section of the documentation.
Thank you, Bibi, for your questions. That was 3 questions.
Yes, Marsha, thank you very much.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to turn the floor over to Alita Sin.
Thank you, Marcia. Good morning, Minister. Minister Gibson, how soon do you expect the payout of $10 million from the dividends?
I expect it tomorrow. But not all my expectations come true.
That is
But
very-
within a reasonable time, I would say within the next couple of weeks, we should have it.
Okay. On the board members of the central bank, are all the board members in place at the moment? Because
No, they're not. There are only 3 in place. Each country has to submit names. We have someone presently in the pipe. We actually have 2 persons in the pipeline to complete our nominations to the board. Curacao still have to appoint 2 members.
How soon do you expect that process to be complete for the 2 members of St. Martin?
It's a complicated process. I do not expect that to be done on short notice, because first it requires a nomination by the board to both governments. Both governments then need to look, both finance ministers need to look at the nominees, and through their council, respective council of ministers have to confirm their agreement or the ratification of that particular person. Following that, it then has to go to the governor to get a Landsbeslot to sign off on it. Once that is there, then both countries sort of changes position as far as their nominees is concerned, so that our council of ministers confirm their nominees, and then their council of ministers confirm our nominees. So the process is somewhat complicated. I don't expect it to be completed shortly, but we're working on it.
Thank you, Alita. That's your 3 questions in round 1. At this time, I'd like to go to round 2. Bibi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marsha. Minister Lee, Minister Gibson, I asked 2 questions. Performance contract, there's a draft, not yet signed. Is that correct?
Correct,
So we don't have one.
correct.
The purchase agreement today at 11 o'clock will be signed off. If
No, I did not say that.
You're going to the
I told
notary.
you I'm meeting with a lawyer at 11 o'clock today
Okay,
to go through the drafts of the deed of transfer, to go through the lease agreement with him, and to go through the the basic final version of the sale and purchase.
All right, so in reality, we still do not have the purchase agreement
Yes,
yet.
we do. We in the very beginning signed that. Oh, we have it. The details are being worked out.
Okay. My third question, Minister Lee. When I asked you about the board members, you gave me a breakdown. But was there any point in time that the supervisory board had, put out applications or to get candidates, and they got 5 candidates? As like you said, it was supposed to be 2 per position, but they managed to
if
get
I-
5.
If I recall,
Said you need the 6 because it has to be 2 candidates per position, so you can be able to make a selection for each position.
you got to repeat. I didn't understand your question, Bibi.
I'm asking you, if a application process was done by the supervisory board in order to get candidates to fill the vacant position, and at some point, they had only 5 candidates, when in fact they were supposed to have 6, so that they can give you 2 per position, so you can make a selection. And then you said, no, I needed 6 candidates, so I can make proper selection.
No, you said they submitted 5.
I'm
I said
asking-
they submitted 6. So they submitted 6. You said 5. I said they submitted 6.
6.
So if I recall, I don't remember the date exactly, but I believe it was December. In keeping with the way that we went about filling the cabinet positions for the ministry, we went through a public selection, an advertised selection process, right? So we threw out the positions that were available within the cabinet. Following that trend, SNV did the same. They advertised for the board positions, and I understood they generated, I can't remember an exact number, but
Right.
a lot of candidates. I've asked for that, or that list of people who applied has never been shared with me by the SNV board. But my understanding is certainly they had many more than the 6. So how they evaluated those, or who was on that list, or who applied, I'm not, that list has never been shared with me. So they have other candidates, but I don't know why they haven't since notified that, that the one member who was accepted but turned down by her employer, why they've not resubmitted nominees for those seats. I mean, that's back in May already, so that's, was it June, July, August? You know, they haven't even submitted the other nominees for those seats.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. Alita, the floor is yours.
Thank you again, Marcia. Minister Gibson, on the casino fees that need to be collected, it's been a week. Have you had any update on the amount?
Well, I had a meeting yesterday with the receiver of taxes. She has sent out dwangschriften, which is summonses, to all of the casinos during the past week. So it's waiting on a reaction. One seems to be prepared to sit down and make a payment arrangement, but that's up to her. And maybe I should share with you, for the total amount that we collected this year up to now in casino fees is $5 million.
Is there a possibility, because you spoke about it last week, about basically so-called fictitious assessment, is there any possibility that any of these assessments or what's owed by the casinos, that they can challenge it and say, we don't owe it?
Everybody can, and some have. That's a basic right that the taxpayer has, to object against an assessment. But this is not an assessment. This is a regulation that says if you got a casino,
You have to pay.
you got to pay 50,000 guilders a month, you know.
On the gaming, speaking about casino and the Gaming Control Board, can you give an update on where that whole process is at the moment?
No, I cannot. That you have to address to Minister Tiat.
Okay.
She's responsible for the gaming board.
Thank you.
The Department of Communication, in collaboration with the University of St. Martin, invites you to a third lecture in the series, The Law Matters to You. Join us at USM 7 p.m. Monday, August 29th, and hear keynote speakers Bert Hoffman, Chairman of the Electoral Council, and Jason Rogers, Chairman of the Maine Voting Bureau, as they focus on the 2016 parliamentary elections and the electoral laws of St. Martin. The Law Matters to You, a lecture series built to inform and educate.